All right, imagine you're out to dinner with friends and everyone orders the most expensive items on the menu. When the bill arrives, you realize that you all forgot your wallets and someone suggests putting it all on your credit card. You reluctantly agree, thinking you'll just pay it off next month, but next month comes and instead of paying it off, you do the same thing again. The interest on your credit card starts to snowball until you're paying more in interest than on the meals you're actually enjoying. Now take that scenario and multiply it by a few $trillion. That's sort of where the United States finds itself today, deep in a debt crisis that's quietly eroding our financial stability. And just like that interest on your credit card, this debt is a ticking time. I can't say the word, but you know what I mean. But unlike your credit card, there's no easy way to pay it down, which is why more and more people are looking for ways to defend their wealth from the possible fallout. Back in 2008, the U.S. government was shaken by the need to spend $700 billion to bail out the banks. At the time, that number seemed enormous, unfathomable, really. But today, we're so accustomed to massive spending that nearly $2 trillion deficit barely raises an eyebrow. We've normalized it even as the interest payments on our national debt approach $1 trillion a year. Think about that. We're spending nearly as much on interest payments as we do on essential services like education, defense, or healthcare. But why should this matter to you? After all, isn't debt just a number on a spreadsheet? Unfortunately, it's much more than that. When the interest on the national debt starts consuming such a significant portion of the budget, it could possibly threaten to undermine the government's ability to fund vital programs. Imagine if your monthly budget was dominated by credit card payments, leaving little for rent, groceries, or savings. That's the reality the U.S. could face if we don't address this issue. You might be wondering, can this enormous debt ever be paid off? It's hard to imagine now, but there was a time when some in Washington actually feared that the national debt might disappear. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, budget surpluses were addressed and expected to be paid off the debt entirely. But then the Iraq War began and any hope of reducing the debt quickly evaporated. Today, our national debt is $35 trillion, and the idea of paying it off seems like a distant dream. To put this into perspective, consider this. If the U.S. government were a person trying to pay off a mortgage, it would need to cut $152 billion from its budget every month for the next 30 years. That's a staggering amount, equivalent to cutting out not just luxuries, but also essential expenses. It's not just about tightening the belt, it's about cutting the belt in half. The numbers become even more alarming when you consider what it would take to pay off the debt in 30 to 100 years. The government would need to cut between $3.1 and $3.7 trillion in spending every year. That's not just trimming the fat, it's slashing entire programs. We'd have to cut half of the entire federal budget, including programs like Social Security and Medicare, just to make a dent in the debt. Let's be honest, the chances of that happening are about as likely as everyone agreeing on the best pizza topping. So, what does the government do instead? Well, it borrows more. But here's where things get dangerous. As the interest payments continue to rise, we risk entering a debt spiral where the government has to issue more debt just to pay the interest on existing debt. It's like taking out a new credit card to pay off the old one. Eventually, the house of cards will collapse. Now, you might be thinking, well, that sounds pretty bleak. Well, what can I do about it? The truth is, while you can't control government spending, you can take steps that may protect your own financial future. One way to do that is by diversifying your portfolio with assets that tend to hold their value even when the dollar doesn't. Precious metals like gold and silver have been trusted for centuries as a hedge against inflation and economic instability. All right, so what does all this mean for you? Well, picture this. The government, needing more money to keep the lights on, has two choices: issue more debt or raise taxes. If it chooses the former, the debt keeps piling up and inflation might follow, eroding the value of your hard-earned dollars. If it chooses the latter, you'll feel the pinch when tax season rolls around. Either way, you're caught in the crossfire. As the debt grows, so too does the likelihood that taxes will rise to keep the system from collapsing. And no one likes paying more taxes. But as the government's financial situation becomes more precarious, raising taxes might be one of the few options left to prevent a full-blown crisis. So where does all this lead? The rising interest on the debt isn't just a minor issue, it's a ticking time. Dang, I did it again. Can't say that word. The point is, every year the government avoids addressing it, the problem gets worse, and the solutions become more painful. Whether it's through higher taxes, inflation, or cuts to essential services, it's likely that the American people will eventually bear the cost. In times like these, it's important to think about how you may be able to protect what you've worked so hard to build. While the government struggles to manage its debt, you have the opportunity to find out how it may be possible to take control of your financial future by considering safer, more stable investment options like a precious metals IRA. Gold and silver have been safe havens in times of economic turmoil, and they could provide the security you need when the financial landscape gets rocky. In the end, dealing with the national debt is like dealing with that never-ending credit card bill. You can ignore it for a while, but eventually the interest will catch up with you. And when it does, it's going to hurt a lot. The U.S. government is no different. The longer we wait to address the rising interest on the debt, the more it will cost us all in the long run. The next time you see the government spending money like there's no tomorrow, remember this: interest payments are the silent killer. They don't grab headlines like a big new spending bill, but they're slowly strangling the budget. If we don't get a handle on it soon, we might find ourselves longing for the days when $700 billion seemed like a lot of money. So what can we do? It's a question that doesn't have an easy answer. Cutting spending is a politically challenging, and raising taxes is unpopular. But one thing is clear: we likely cannot continue down this path indefinitely. At some point, the bill will come due, and when it does, we'll have to make some tough choices. The sooner we start addressing the rising interest on the debt, the better off we will all be. But as you think about these tough choices, consider what steps you can take now to potentially safeguard your financial future. One smart move might be to explore the benefits of a precious metals IRA. Gold and silver have stood the test of time as reliable stores of value, especially during periods of economic uncertainty. By looking into a Goldco precious metals IRA, you may be able to help protect your savings from the potential fallout of rising national debt and inflation. Don't wait until it's too late. Call the Goldco number on your screen now or scan the QR code to learn how you may be able to help secure your financial future with a precious metals IRA. It's time to learn how to take control to try and make sure your wealth is diversified and protected no matter what the future holds.